I'm going to say this, please. Don't think I'm being ugly. Some of them had signs that would read something like this. No, hell no.
That's part of that just ugliness, nastiness that people were showing. And we've seen pictures of those signs, and some are just filled with racial hatred.
Yeah, they showed a lot of that. The thing that I remember, I'm not sure that I saw all of it, but I saw a little of it, was on the morning that they were supposed to come in. Faubus had called, now Faubus, you know, Governor Faubus, had called out the National Guard. It was not to protect those 9 to get into the school. It was to prevent them from getting into the school, and he said, for their protection. All of the 9 kids found out on the day they were to enter to go to a certain place. You can read all of that if you want to in Daisy Bates's issue. She told a fine story. It was basically factual. All of them got word, I believe, except Elizabeth Eckford. The youngest one, I believe, maybe the youngest one of the bunch. No. She was 15. There was one that was 14. And here she came to school by herself. What she went through, I wouldn't wish on the dirtiest dog I ever had. It just wasn't reasonable. She experienced some hatred toward, I don't think it was toward her personally. Please don't feel bad what I'm fixing to say. I think what she was feeling at that point from some of the white folks, hatred because she was black. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. They had to send her back. As she looked around, this is a story I heard later. As she looked around, she thought she saw one old lady that looked like she'd be friendly, maybe nice. And when she looked back the second time, that old lady spit in her face.
Talking about the nastiness of the people, were you afraid for any of your current students that they might get involved?
For my kids in my class, no. Let me say it like this. The first day when all the racket out here began, they were no different than you'd be. You wanted to see what was going on. And there was quite a bit of kids, when they weren't seeing me looking, they'd stand up and see. But that only lasted a day, maybe 2, I don't know. You see, when you're sitting down here, you can't see out those windows. So after a day or 2, we went on to school. But it was hot. You know how hot it gets down here in 1st of September? We had to have the windows open. We didn't have any air conditioning. I don't think I even had a fan. So we had to have the windows open. We could hear all the noise. But my kids were some of the best behaved kids you ever saw. They were like you. They stayed in their seats. They did their work, what they were supposed to do. They were well behaved. I was proud of them. Now, while I'm on this subject, in relation to what Mr. West just asked, how did things go through the year? Well, a lot of what I'm going to say, I did not see personally. I heard it, was told, so it's like hearsay evidence. May be true, but it wouldn't stand up in a court of law. One of the things I'm going to tell you right now would stand up in the court of law. We had a lot of disturbances that year. And I don't know how many times, but I know it had to have been at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 times during the year. We'd have a bomb scare. On one of those occasions, I had the dubious honor of helping search all of the lockers for the bomb. Now play the what if story. What if you had been there searching in the lockers? What if you had been the one who had actually found the bomb in the locker? And what if it had gone off? What would have happened to you? Those were the thoughts going through my mind as I did that. It wasn't exactly what I would call a fun thing, nor what I would want to do every day. Now, a lot of things were happening, a lot of noise, a lot of publicity, and a lot of news reporting that was stretched out of whack. You got to remember now, in 1957, television was very, very new. Probably in Little Rock, not over 5 or 6 years old. And it was all black and white. We had a television. Shoot, I spent a whole month's salary and got one. Still didn't cost that much now, compared to now. She would see things on television. She'd listen to the radio, and she'd hear things. And I'd come home, and she was as nervous wreck. Did this happen over there? Do you see it? Excuse me. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. And she'd settle down. Got to remember, she was sitting over at the house during that year with a little 4-year-old boy by herself. It wasn't exactly fun for a young mom. See, there were a lot of other things that happened that year. Things that I did not see personally, but I know happened. Now I'm going to put it like this on one of them. I'm going to ask you a question, and you tell me if it's okay. Is it okay in this interview here for me to use the name of one of the 9? Is that okay, George? All right. One of the 9, Minnie Jean Brown, a fine girl, very intelligent, but she didn't have quite as much patience, and she couldn't take it quite as well as some of the others. Now this is something that would happen frequently. I'll use you as an example. You're Minnie Jean, okay? Come out of this class, go into your next class, you can be out in the hall, and there were a few of these. Now, George, they weren't the majority by any means. These were a few of the kids who were anti-integration, strongly anti-integration. Hey, they were even anti-black. And when she'd go out in the hall, oftentimes one of these kids would come up behind her, get out of the way, nigger. And she couldn't take it. And sometimes she'd say, "Don't bother me, white trash." What did those two things stir up? You see what's going to happen here? Somewhere down the line, it's going to be too much and it's going to blow up. And it did one day in the cafeteria during lunch hour. You may have heard that story. It happened. One of them spilled a bowl of soup or ketchup or chili or something on Minnie. So she went and got hers, came back. She proceeded to walk by and deliberately tripped and spilled it right on. Fair enough, wasn't it? The two of them got expelled for 2 weeks. Something else happened and Minnie Jean got expelled permanently. That maybe you think is the end of the story, but it's not. Minnie Jean was invited to come to a high school, I believe in New York, and did really well. Finished high school there, went on to college, got her degree. I think I'm right in this. I know you probably have studied it more than I have recently and what's happened afterwards. But I believe all 9 of those kids not only finished high school, but finished college. And maybe a couple of them even got their doctorate, right? So you see, they weren't any slouchy young'uns. They were good young'uns. They had ambitions, just like you have ambitions. I was proud of them, really was. So that's some of the things. Oh, I want to tell you one more. After Minnie Jean was expelled, this actually happened. Somebody did it. I don't know who did it. It wasn't done by the kids in school. Somebody printed them. Buttons, little signs, and some of the kids wore them. 1 down, 8 to go. That's a heck of a note, isn't it? I mean, that'd make you feel real good, wouldn't it? So you see, what I'm telling you is this. There was a bunch of that going on, but the vast majority of the kids in Central High were well-behaved kids and acted like, I hate to put it this way, good human beings. They went about their business, they studied, they learned that. You see, they had a tradition to uphold. Central High, prior to that shutdown year, was one of the premier high schools in America. It was a good one. We had more kids, and percentage-wise, who scored high on their college exams. On that, oh gosh, I forgot.
ACT. ACT.
Well, that's your entrance exam, ATC, SAT, and all of that. But those who were elected to that higher office because of their good quality, you know what I'm saying?
Honor Society?
Huh?
Honor Society?
Honor Society. See, I mean, after all, I know what I'm talking about. I just couldn't remember. We had a large number who would be elected to that Honor Society every year. A large number of kids who won scholarships, both academically and scholastic, not scholastic, but athletic. It was a fine school. Now, it doesn't take a lot of smarts for you to figure out. When they closed her down the next year, these kids had no place to go. By that time, Hall High had opened. Horace Mann, Central, Hall High were closed. Nobody allowed. I hate to use a percentage, but let's just say 20% of the kids probably belonged in families that were affluent enough that they could go to private schools or go to grandma and grandpa's and go to school there, finish their degrees, and do well. What about the other 80%? What if you were in that 80% and you didn't have any place to go to school and you were going to be a senior? Now, if you were maybe a ninth grader, oh, hey, I'll get a year off. You know, you might have that attitude, but not if you were fixing to be a senior. And maybe your grade point average was about 3.7. See, this was a situation that made it so bad, really made it so bad. Oh boy, I'm already past time. I've got some other tales to tell you.
Actually, we'd like to hear them. I want to see if Jenny has any questions from the newspaper group. Or
They're busy
around
writing
Jenny.
it all.
Now, I'll tell you ahead of time, you're going to have to speak quite loudly, or George will have to repeat it. I don't hear too well.
Yes, sir. We have a question that says, what is the most important thing you would say to present students regarding your experience to continue a legacy of justice and equality?
Well, because I'm not associated with school anymore, I can say this. And if it touches on your toes, tough. Okay? First of all, Get to know your God. Have a personal relationship with Him. Let Him guide your life. That's the first thing. Second, in school, you learn a citizenship of how you should be, how you should behave, what your attitude would be toward others, and what you need to learn from your subjects. Do that, and you cannot be anything other than a success. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the way I feel about it. Now, I'm going to say one other thing at this point. Some of you believe, perhaps at this point, that you cannot say anything in school like this about the Bible. Yes, you can. What you cannot do is to teach religion. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Clara a question. All of you can listen.